Representative Ocasio-Cortez, what do you say to that point, right? When we've got a significant amount of evidence that China owns the vast majority, if not all, 80% plus of the cobalt mine production coming out of Congo, et cetera. And we know, I think it's irrefuted, that there's child labor exploited to get those minerals. Those minerals are central, if not fully necessary, for the production of EVs, which even objectively we have to acknowledge are not fully able to power the ability of the American public to get to their jobs and their work and so forth. And yet we're mandating that we have 2/3 of the production be EVs by 2030. Assume we were able to ever produce batteries that last long enough, the charging stations, all the stuff. Why would we get rid of the American production of it?
Thank you. There are several different components to your question. I want to make sure that I address them. First and foremost, on the issue of child exploitation, child labor, I think it is the role of the United States for us to push back forcefully on this production, and not just in the production of energy, but across the board. We see this in textile production, energy production, cobalt mining. It is horrific, and we need to make sure that our sources do not include child labor. But to get to the core of the question, too, on the China front, is that I find it interesting that there is this concern about Chinese ownership of minerals, and it is legitimate. However, the response to that seems to be deregulation specifically for companies that are largely Chinese-owned here in the United States. These companies are subsidiaries where the benefit of what we are deregulating here, and I'll give you a specific example. I would be remiss not to mention that the minerals produced specifically at the proposed Twin Metals mine that is implicated in this legislation would most likely be shipped to China for refining and smelting to be sold on the global market. These are not American-owned companies that American mined minerals would be going to. And so if your concern is the Chinese predominance of ownership in the mining market, I would be very concerned about passing this legislation. So that, I think, on the China piece there. And lastly, on the meeting our targets and mining cobalt, I think it's a false choice to say that in order for us to mine cobalt, we either have to destroy some of the most sacred lands in the United States or rely on child labor. There's responsible mining in the United States that is available to us. But secondly, I also find it interesting that the majority presently pushes back against battery recycling, which would allow us to open the path to reducing our reliance on mining in general. There is enormous potential in recycling many of these EV batteries, but we have not made the investments or the shifts necessary in order to unlock that so that we can reduce our reliance on solely mining as the only source of battery.
We are here today because the President of the United States is failing to fulfill his duty to defend our country, to defend the borders of the United States, as required by the Constitution. Now, I've read and heard and I'm aware of the academic arguments about the definition of invasion, and I'm sure we'll cover that in the hearing today. But the reality of those of us living on the front lines, the reality of those of us who live in Texas, Arizona, and states along the border, that notwithstanding any protestations to the contrary, we are experiencing an invasion at the southern border.
Let's talk about invasion. Let's talk about the invasion of the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, when the heart of American democracy was attacked by a mob, many of them violent, of then President Trump's supporters who fought to keep him in power illegally. So you have to forgive me. You got to give me a little grace here for not being able to take this hearing seriously. This hearing, as we've said, is an absurd legal argument. The Constitution is clear. The federal government is supreme in matters of immigration and border policy. And with all due respect to Chairman Roy, I believe that his call for Texas to ignore the Supreme Court is an endorsement of lawlessness and chaos.
But right now, what we have are Democrats in the Senate wanting to hide behind a bill they know has no chance of moving through because, frankly, if it were passed, My colleagues on the other side of the aisle are concerned about us campaigning on this, making it a political issue. If that legislation were passed, the issue would still exist. And what the former president knows is that the bill being negotiated in the Senate is not a good one. He's calling that out. But I can assure you, I don't take orders from the former president, nor do I take orders from Somalis in Minnesota. But some people do.
This is ridiculous. This is all theatrics. Shame on you for exploiting this issue. Shame on you for ginning up all this hate and all this, all this vitriol, and not wanting to be part of the solution, not wanting to do anything to fix it. I'm also puzzled by the fact, and I think I need to get I think I need to go to the Capitol physician and see if I can get a neck brace, because I have whiplash following the logic of some of my Republican friends.
But one last point on this notion that somehow by rejecting the bill that the Senate was debating, and by the way, has not sent to us, the Senate is merely debating it. They're not even debating it yet. They haven't even proceeded to it yet. They haven't even gotten past cloture on proceeding to it yet. Why? Because it is fundamentally flawed. The bill does not do what my colleagues on the other side of the aisle were suggesting it does. So I'm sorry, you're getting punched in the head 10 times. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to say, well, sorry, we'll just start punching you in the head 5 times. Why won't you take that half a loaf? I'm sorry, that's not how that works.
The gentleman from Texas just took almost 10 minutes, 10 minutes of my life, which I'll never get back, and still didn't get it right, which is basically that this move to impeach Secretary Mayorkas is a sham. There's no basis for this.
This bill is just simply empowering the IRS to go after large number of American citizens. And that, I think, is not something that is in the best interest of the people. Fact of the matter is, roughly, and these are ballpark numbers, they change by the year, the top 1% of the population is paying about 40% of the taxes. So I'm not sure what the fair share here is.
This amendment would actually do just the opposite of what specifically my good friend Mr. Roy mentioned. It would reject the harmful Republican cuts to the IRS and general government agencies and ensure that hardworking taxpayers are protected from extreme GOP policies.
The reality is there are significant concerns and the impacts of illegal aliens on the communities that we represent. That's the truth. My Democratic colleagues don't want to talk about that. They want to hide behind a Senate bill that had no chance, zero, of passage, was purposely constructed to give cover for those who know full well, because the American people are very clearly seeing it with their eyes, that this administration is purposely failing to secure the border of the United States, with Democrats like Mark Elias, who is out there doing what? Challenging laws in Arizona to make it not possible for those who are here illegally to vote. Now, why would he do that? Why do you suppose he would do that? I don't know. Got some thoughts on that. I think it's pretty self-evident. I've been in this godforsaken town long enough to know that I'm going to get a bill that, as the bill we're voting on this week, busts the caps, spends more money, increases interest, increases spending, doesn't actually make any of the policy changes we promised. That's the town. You can actually oppose it beforehand with almost 100% degree certainty when you know exactly what's coming out through the system. And the system in this bill, which was very clear from all the signals being sent by the usual suspects, including the Chamber of Commerce Republicans, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are alluding to, who were praising the bill, the same Republicans who have been complicit for several decades in allowing a border situation to get to the situation where we have thousands of Texans who are getting impacted by what's actually happening.
So let me bring everybody back to reality and give you a little history lesson. The reason you oppose the bill is not because you have any policy issues with it. It addresses everything that you've been talking about for the last couple of years. Because all I've heard from any of you is noun, verb, border. Noun, verb, border. That's all you know. And then you get a border bill from the second most conservative member of the Senate, and let me tell you why you oppose it. You oppose it because Donald Trump opposes it. That's it. That is the simplest explanation. Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is the correct one. Donald Trump opposes it because Donald Trump wants to be president, because Donald Trump has 91 felony counts that he's facing, and the only way that those go away and he is not held accountable is if he's president. And if the noun-verb border plan is no longer working and he can't use that as an issue, then he may not be president. So he says, I don't support this. I want the issue, not the solution. And so you all, God, I don't know what it feels like to be so helpless to have to follow somebody like Donald Trump. Follow Donald Trump. And it's fine. I get it. You must see yourselves as so very tiny and so very small when you look at Donald Trump. And he's so big that he looms so large over you that you would do anything that he says to support him. But that is the reality. This is not a policy dispute. Donald Trump wants the border issue, and so you're going to go along with Donald Trump. That's it. Welcome back to reality. And I yield to Ms. Escobar.
We're going to have a lot of debate here about the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And on this, I think there's a lot of bipartisan agreement. There are a lot of bipartisan concerns about the size and scope of government. I think it is important to remember, James Madison wrote to Thomas Jefferson, May 13th, 1798, quote, perhaps it is a universal truth that the loss of liberty at home is to be charged against danger, real or pretended, from abroad. The founders knew what they were doing. The founders intentionally built into the United States Constitution protections for us, protections for the people. Unfortunately, the legislation before us doesn't do what is necessary to answer the question, to secure the people's rights. This legislation authorizes Title VII, reauthorizes Title VII, Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act for 5 years from the date of enactment. This bill is far from perfect, but we're going to have a lot of debate on that bill in just a moment in the rule and in 2 hours later, and I'm going to come back to that in a moment. There are 3 other pieces of legislation. First, H.R. 529, extending limits of U.S. Customs Waters Act. This bipartisan legislation enhances Customs and Border Protection's air and marine operations mission by extending Customs law enforcement authority from 12 to 24 nautical miles of the United States coast. This will help CBP combat unlawful activity in coastal waters at a time when we have significant problems with respect to our borders. H.Res. 1112, denouncing the Biden administration's immigration policies. This resolution denounces President Biden's open border policies, calls on the administration to immediately put in place policies that will end the crisis at our southern border. This is an important message. It's an important statement, but I hope this Congress will speak with one voice against an administration that refuses to enforce the law. This resolution is one statement along those lines. H.Res. 1117, opposing efforts to place one-side pressure on Israel with respect to Gaza. This resolution affirms that Israel, our greatest ally in the Middle East, has the right to defend itself against Hamas, and makes clear that the House of Representatives opposes efforts to place one-sided pressures on Israel to implement an immediate ceasefire. This resolution is necessary.
Mr. Speaker, this place is so broken. It's pathetic. And it's interesting to listen to the gentleman from Texas who's now managing this rule, who regularly lectures us on the importance of regular order and making sure that we have a more open process. And the rule that he is bringing before the membership today, 4 measures, 3 of these measures are being brought to us under completely closed rules. No amendments are made in order. 3 of the bills weren't even considered by committees of jurisdiction. No hearings and no markup, and yet here we are. What a wonderful process to celebrate. I mean, this place is not functioning. We don't even know whether this rule that we're spending time debating today will even pass because there's such disarray on the Republican side. It is a pathetic way for this Congress to be run.
Our constituents want us to work on really important things that make a difference in their lives every day. So what are we doing today? 3 of these bills don't really address anything. We have more resolutions that just express things but don't have any solutions. We're spending another valuable week on non-binding resolutions and bills that Republicans have already failed to pass. This is the third time we'll vote on a resolution complaining about a broken immigration system that's been broken for years, and it's Congress's fault that we have not fixed it. Republicans want to just talk about blame, but do they offer any solutions? That's not how governing works. It's not about coming down here and passing press releases on the floor of the House. If you want to engage in a problem and offer solutions, you engage in bipartisan negotiations to pass a law that fixes the problem. Instead, Republicans do the opposite. They block bipartisan immigration deals and complained that nothing's happening. Well, something is happening. Republicans are making the problem worse. 6 months ago, the president sent Congress a supplemental border security request. That request would have bolstered border security and slowed the flow of refugees by addressing the root cause of migration. For 6 months, Republicans who control this House have refused to take up the president's supplemental border security funding request. In the Senate, a bipartisan, led by a Republican senator and Democrats, worked for 4 months. They worked hard on a bipartisan border security deal. Before we could even discuss the merits of it in this House to say what we liked or didn't like, Trump told them to kill the bill. Following Trump's orders, as always, House Republican leadership declared it dead on arrival in the House. Why? They want to preserve immigration as a political weapon, not something that Americans are asking us to fix. Americans would like to see comprehensive immigration reform. How about if we do something like taking up the Bipartisan Dream and Promise Act, or the Bipartisan Farm Work Modernization Act, which passed with bipartisan support out of the Congress because we need more agrarian workers to help pick the food we need to place on our tables. What's especially shameful is that instead of offering solutions, Republicans are creating a dangerous environment in America. Rhetoric from the twice impeached and 4 times indicted former President Trump that suggests immigrants are poisoning the blood of America is dangerous and disgraceful. Trump's language echoes almost verbatim the propaganda and hate used by Hitler and other Nazi leaders. America's not Nazi Germany.
On this vote, the yeas are 193, the nays are 228. The resolution is not adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Let me just say that I can't believe what's happening. This is our second Rules Committee meeting of the week, and it's the 4th time, let me repeat, the 4th time a bill to reauthorize FISA has come before our committee. I mean, give me a break. The American people want effective government. What my Republican friends are giving them, quite frankly, is a circus. Before this Congress, it had been 20 years since a rule failed. It's been 50 years, half a century, since we've seen this many rules go down. And Republicans have done it 7 times. 1 or 2, 3 times maybe, that's just incompetence. But 7? 7 is a disaster. 7 is paralysis. It means weeks and weeks of sitting around doing nothing because Republicans can't get their house in order and do their job, and do the job that they were sent here to do. 19 Republicans voted against a Republican rule yesterday. 19, including the member that managed debate on the rule. I don't think that has ever happened in the history of the committee. I mean, it's genuinely shocking to me. This member voted for the rule in committee, but then voted against it on the floor. Now, I've heard of I was for it before I was against it, but this is nuts. The rules majority turned the keys over to someone who wanted to crash the car. During debate, I think he even came pretty close to telling the rest of the conference to vote no on the rule. Now, I'm actually sure Mr. Roy was aware of the power they entrusted him with as manager of the rule. he could have offered an amendment to the rule on the floor to do whatever the hell he wanted to do, including rewrite the bill entirely, and it might have passed. The person they picked to send to the floor to represent their position, the Speaker's position, couldn't even be trusted to do it. No wonder we can't get anything done. I mean, this is crazy. I've never seen anything like this in my life. And here's some free advice. Find out if your manager supports the rule before you send him or her to the floor to manage the rule. And to waste all of our time to bring this rule to the floor and let it fail, I mean, does the whip's office need to have an arithmetic teacher brought in? I mean, we've heard some testimony on this bill 3 different times. And instead of running this place like professionals, Republicans wasted our time, and for what? They barely changed the bill. I mean, it would be laughable if this wasn't the United States House of Representatives. And now we are here for a 4th time. So it would be funny if it weren't turning the world's greatest deliberative body into a circus, but they are. Anyone with 2 eyes and a brain can understand what's going on. Republicans cannot govern, and voters across the country are going to walk into the voting booth and ask themselves, do they want the adults in charge or not? And they are going to vote accordingly. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time.
I'll take a couple minutes to respond to the ranking member. The fact of the matter is nobody in real America gives 2 rats' rear ends about whether or not someone votes on a rule, manages a rule, goes down to the floor, and then votes on a rule. Nobody in America cares to see the continued perpetuation of what this body, this Congress, has been doing to the American people for generations. Racking up $34.5 trillion of debt, endangering the American people with wide open borders, and all of the stuff that this Congress has been doing endlessly. And the fact is that most American people don't care about those procedures. They want to see the result. So no apology. There's nothing written in the Bible, there's nothing written in the Constitution, there's nothing sacrosanct about how this place is supposed to operate, because what has been doing in this body for far too long is not working. It's just not. No matter who's in charge, no matter who's in the majority, because this isn't about shirts and skins. The American people are sick of shirts and skins. This is about questioning the regime in this town that wants to decide through the intelligence community that there's only one way to do this stuff and that you can't question it.
Mr. Chair.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Yeah, first of all, I said the gentleman takes this. I'm not asking him to apologize. I was just making a comment. I think the American people do care that this Congress seems incapable of getting anything done at all. As I said at my outset, nearly 10 months before this committee, which all consequential legislation goes through, has reported a bill to the floor that has actually become law. I mean, I don't know, maybe people send you here to do nothing, but my constituents sent me here to actually help solve problems and get things done. I don't disagree that there are issues regarding the FISA bill, and I don't know how you would have, I don't know whether we would have voted the same way on some of these amendments. I certainly support the warrant amendment, but that's not the point. We're just wasting time, and you know, to sit through, this is the 4th hearing, to bring a bill to the floor and to have it go down, to me seems like a colossal waste of time. So I'm not asking the gentleman for an apology. I mean, I don't know why the gentleman wanted to be on this committee if he's not going to try to help move legislation to the floor, but that's the decision that your leadership has made. You know, but the gentleman can do whatever the heck he wants. I was just making an observation, and apparently I got under his skin. But with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back and have no further comment. Mr. Speaker, everything we have heard from the other side has confirmed that this impeachment is a predetermined political stunt. Again, this is the first time in American history an impeachment could go to the floor of the United States House of Representatives with no evidence, no proof, no elements of a crime, nothing at all. Not my words, Mr. Speaker. It's your own colleagues who say that. Again, a few more quotes. Jonathan Turley, a top Republican legal advisor, he says there is also no current evidence that he, meaning Secretary Mayorkas, is corrupt or committed an impeachable offense. Donald Trump's own impeachment defense lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, and I quote, "I urge principled Republicans who care about the Constitution to oppose those in their party who are seeking to impeach and remove Mayorkas based on non-constitutional accusations." Republican leaders told their donors, behind closed doors that they were going to impeach Mayorkas before they even began their sham investigation. They raised money off of this. They promised Marjorie Taylor Greene last year that they were going to impeach no matter what in order to help Donald Trump to distract from his legal troubles and their own incompetence. And I get why they need to change the subject. Trump was the worst president in my lifetime, probably in history. He tried to overturn the election results when he lost. He said he wants to be a dictator, quote, on day one. And he invokes Adolf Hitler, saying immigrants, quote, poison the blood of our country. The worst jobs record since the Great Depression. Told everyone to drink bleach and take horse medicine during COVID. Has been indicted more times than elected. And is currently in trial for 91 felony charges. And that's after being ordered to pay $83 million after a jury of his peers decided he was a rapist. That's the leader of the Republican Party. That's who this impeachment is about, Donald Trump. Not Secretary Mayorkas, a good, honorable, decent man. Donald Trump, a corrupt, dishonorable, disgraceful man. This is all about helping Republicans rile up MAGA voters and distracting from their inability to govern and address the critical issues facing our country. Instead of legislating, they are being led by Marjorie Taylor Greene and the extreme MAGA chock-full-of-nuts caucus to pursue their baseless, extreme, and harmful impeachment charade that distracts from actually securing the border. Do we have a problem at the border? Absolutely. Democrats and President Biden want real comprehensive solutions to fix it. But the MAGA extremists have shown no interest in working with House Democrats to address the challenges facing the American people. What we need is Republicans to stop playing political games. And that's the exact opposite of what's happening here. The exact opposite of this cynical, reckless impeachment stunt. So we're going to continue as Democrats to put people over politics, to fight for issues that matter, to try to lower costs, grow our economy, and yes, to secure our border. And if Republicans decide they want to join us as partners in government to solve these challenges, we welcome that. And if they don't, there's an election coming up in November. But I would say history is going to judge this Republican majority. But I don't think we need to wait for that. The voters are going to judge us all in November. And I think people are going to look at this fraudulent impeachment, and they're going to look at Republicans' lack of accomplishments, and they are going to vote them out because of their incompetence, their extremism, and their refusal to work with Democrats to address the challenges our country faces, including the border. And as I said before, this entire impeachment stunt is an absurd, cynical exercise in extremism. I strongly, strongly urge a no vote on this rule and a no vote on the underlying resolution. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.